The future belongs to those who dare, those who will do extra. Hi, I'm Mark Croskery. Welcome to Business Live Extra, the program that looks beyond dollars and cents to the movers and shakers in business. Our guest today is a woman whose talents cover a multitude of industries, a managerial career that spans 15 years. She attended the University of Toronto, U of T. After graduation, she returned to work for the family business in Jamaica. She is the director of Everglades Farms Limited, as well as a subsidiary of the world-renowned rum distillery, Hampden Estate. That's right, our guest today is Christelle Harris, director at Hampden Estate. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mark.
It's good to have you on BLE.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me. You make me sound so impressive. I didn't realize.
Well, you've done a lot, and you've been back in Jamaica for how long now, roughly?
I've been back really with my feet on the ground for 10 years now, but back and forth really for over 15, almost 20.
Okay. And would you say you're the director of Hampden Estates, better known as Hampden Rums?
Yes, but even some people in Jamaica don't really know Hampden Rum. So yes, I suppose, but we could call it director of Hampden Estate, which is a rum distillery in Trelawny. And Everglades Farms Limited is the parent company, but a lot of people wouldn't know what that means. So. And
how does it feel like being a lady at the table? You know, whether persons say princess of rum, the queen of rum, whatever you aspire to be. But is it legitimate? Is it tough being what some may deem in a man's business?
I don't see it that way. I think it might be as a result of the rum industry internationally being extremely welcoming. And I've been asked this question many times, and I feel like when I respond positively saying, it's actually it's not that intimidating, it's not that bad. There's almost an anticipation that I would respond by saying, it's been a very difficult task and the time is now for women. The time is now.
Yes.
But I feel like I've stepped into an industry internationally that is welcoming of that. There was always the conception that, not misconception, it was a reality that in the beverage industry, particularly the spirits industry, it was a boys' club. And really women didn't have a place. But thanks to women like Joy Spence, Dr. Joy Spence, who is a friend of mine, I'm very lucky to call her a friend of mine. She's so supportive of people in the industry who are following in her footsteps or trying to follow in her footsteps.
Yes.
They broke down those barriers. And she actually is so celebrated internationally that it made it very easy for people like me.
And you bring up Joy, who is famous, very well known, Jamaica and internationally. But when you think about, Lascelles de Macardo, which isn't the same anymore. You think about, Billy McConnell, and you think about, as you mentioned, the boys' club, lots of the guys. You think about the global markets, a lot of the liquor companies, male dominated. Now in financial services, you have Cathy Wood blowing up the markets now with ARK Investments, and PepsiCo has had a female CEO. So how have you been able to prosper so far? Come back to your point, being a lady, getting out there, getting the Hampden Rum brands internationally or more export driven so far.
I was very naive. I thought I knew a lot about rum because I grew up in Appleton country. I grew up in rum country. I took so much pride in being able to represent, although a competing brand, to be able to represent a Jamaica rum product. That I took it to market in the export. I took Rumfire. I don't know if you know about Rumfire, but Rumfire is our white rum. And it was the first ever bottled and produced brand direct from the estate to hit the local market and the international market. I'll get to that in a second where I make people understand, well, if Hampden has been around since 1753, what on earth was the distillery doing if it was only 10 years ago that a rum from the distillery hit the market? So I took Rumfire, which was our baby, and I said, well, if it won one silver award, which it did, at a Ministry of Rum competition in Chicago, it must be really great. So I took it on the road. My first show was the Berlin Rum Festival. and then the UK Rum Festival. And very quickly I realized I knew nothing about rum.
So you were hitting the markets in a sales marketing capacity.
Yeah.
To get your, you got your personal brand out there, but get the company brand and the product brands out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did it on the ground.
And if we take it back, Christelle, how did you get started? We spoke about University of Toronto, maybe your first job, but how did you evolve as a person, before you came back to Jamaica and before you came back to your roots?
Well, I've been working since I was 8. So there's never been a question, although some people say, yes, she was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. In a way I was, but I also feel like that was a misconception. My family has worked very hard. Every generation has worked extremely hard. And although, yes, I was the princess of the family, I'm not going to pretend like I wasn't. My grandparents spoiled me rotten, not with things necessarily, but with attention. I've seen work all my life. I've been working since I was 8 years old, started in the pharmacies with my mother.
That's Discount Pharmacy, or
that at the time was Ligony Lane Pharmacy. That preceded Discount Centre and Pharmacy.
Ligony Lane was the first one in the chain.
Yes.
Okay.
And I used to go to work with her. I would go to play sports during the summer, and then after tennis or whatever it was, I would go to work. I'd like to go to Sovereign to hang out with my friends. My mother would say, "Hang out? Hang out? What is that? No, we don't do that." So. That is the work
And so would you
ethic.
say that work ethic, you started to really get it at this early age, whether it's summer jobs, Christmas jobs, but just getting into the business?
Yeah, absolutely.
And who really pushed that on you? Was that from your grandmother, or is it from your parents? Or
I think it was from my mother. My father didn't have to say anything because once my mother spoke, I listened, which I'm extremely grateful for now. But that was passed down to her from watching her parents. So it wasn't really an option. So that was my childhood, really. And I was extremely close with my family as a result because all they did was work. It was all about family life and work. That's it.
And you spoke about the princess part. You really became quite popular, for the Miss Jamaica contest.
That's right.
What, from the summer jobs, everything, and then, boom, you jump into Miss Jamaica. You came in the top 3, which is an achievement in its own.
I did. I was my actual title. I would like to correct you. Was first princess.
Okay? So you were runner up. So we get it correct and accurate. And it was a big achievement.
It was. I think. Well, a lot of people don't know this. Those who are close to me know this. But I suffered from an insecurity. I think I still somewhat do all my life of being overweight. And I wasn't huge. It wasn't to the point where it was a health issue, but I think a lot of the times as young women we feel such societal pressure. And even though my family never made a big deal of it, although my nickname was Miss Piggy until I was 17, I will hold them responsible for that one.
Okay.
But I suffered that insecurity, and there was a time when it was when Portia Simpson Miller was elected the leader of the People's National Party, and it was on television. And I had just had my wisdom teeth out. I say that there's a point to that part, I promise. So I was on painkillers.
You lost a lot of weight during the wisdom teeth.
No, it wasn't that. Nothing stopped me. I was gulping down those milkshakes like nothing. But my mother, when Portia got elected that night, my mother looked at me and she said, "Christelle, if Portia could be the first female leader, I think that you need to give yourself the opportunity to do something rash, something that you've always dreamed of." So she said, and my mother is a tomboy. My mother is the furthest thing away from wearing a dress. She would never suggest anything, where I put myself in front of people. She wouldn't do it for herself, but she had a confidence in me. She said, "I think you should enter Miss Jamaica."
So she really boosted you up that night, hyped you up. And what was your first gut feeling?
So hard because I was on the painkillers too. I found it the most comical thing ever. I woke up the next morning. I called the gym, and it was 5 months later, coronation, and I had lost about 40 pounds. I worked out 4 hours a day. I read a new book every week. I started studying my Spanish and my French again. I poured
The
myself
Spanish and the
into
French studying was to prepare for the Miss Jamaica, or just you wanted to do better for yourself?
I just wanted to do better for myself, and I think I'm the same way now. I'm currently studying Italian and Mandarin. Like, I have nothing else to do. But
Are you fluent in Spanish now?
I'm fluent in conversational Spanish, but because I've stopped the academic route for such a long time, I majored in it in university.
Okay.
I suppose if I were to sit down with some literature, I would struggle a bit, but I can get by.
Right. And after that, you went on to Canada, University of Toronto. What did you study for your bachelor's degree, for your undergraduate studies?
I studied. I did a double major in political science and Spanish. I ended up taking a minor in history too, but that's a long story.
And why political science? Was it parents guiding you? Was it something maybe you have aspirations to join politics down the road, or how did that come about?
I had always been enamored with the idea of representing Jamaica in some sort of international atmosphere or arena. And so that's what I think I was kind of gearing up to do. And I think political science, or a background in political science, is always going to be helpful when considering any type of career like that. Spanish, because I loved it, and it was somewhat easy for me. It was a challenge, but it was enjoyable.
And any brilliant moments, any tough times, challenges when you were at University of Toronto that you really took away?
No, I wouldn't say so. I had a very full university life.
Okay.
I didn't do particularly well. I didn't do particularly well in high school either, but I always applied myself 100%. But my problem is I'm a Gemini. So I apply myself 100% to everything across the board, and I want to do a million different things, even if there's only time for 10.
And a Gemini meaning that you're quite creative, or?
I'm creative, and I tend to have laser focus on things, but not for a very long time. So I'm interested in, like a child would be, I suppose. A child would want to be an astronaut today and a ballerina tomorrow. And I would have focus on things, but I'd want to focus on everything. So I really milked the university experience, I think, in that I learned how to think analytically, and I learned how to spread myself and get the most out of every opportunity, I think.
That comes.
Because a lot of the times, I think that it's great to push children and to push them to do well academically.
That's good. And we're going to get right back to that. We take our first break on Business Live Extra. More when we return. Welcome back to Business Live Extra. Hampden Estate is over 260 years old, and it is located in the parish of Trelawny in the northwest of Jamaica. It was founded in 1753. In 2009, Everglades Farms Limited, owned by the Hussey family, acquired the estate via public bid. The Hampden Estate has developed an extremely complex technique for the production of aromatic rums. Let's hear more now from Director Christelle Harris. Christelle, welcome back.
Thank you.
Before we get into all the rums and the production, after university, you came home for a while, but really you jumped into the Los Angeles scene and you wanted to be an actress for a period of your career. How did that come about, and how did it work out for you?
I know, it seems so all over the place, doesn't it? But when I was actually in Toronto at boarding school and in university, I developed this passion for dancing. That's one of the things I was doing in university. I was a part of the dance team. We did all the openings for the basketball games and the football games, as well as I danced every opportunity I got to. And when I came back to Jamaica, I was trying to find an outlet for this this type of hip hop and performance dance that I couldn't find very easily. So I after about 2 years, I had this gnawing in me. That's when I did Miss Jamaica. And I said to my family afterwards, I didn't win, so I didn't have the responsibility of representing in Miss
Who
World.
beat you in Miss Jamaica that year, by the way?
It was Sarah Lawrence, now Dr. Sarah
Doctor,
Lawrence.
okay.
Yes, who I just saw the other day. She was actually treating one of my team members from the hotel. So I was very fortunate.
A worthy competitor? Was a
Slightly.
big competition?
She won Caribbean Queen. She won the title of Queen of the Caribbean in Miss World that year.
Okay.
So I would say she was definitely a worthy competitor.
All right.
Lovely woman.
Yeah.
So I did Miss Jamaica, and I was just feeling this. I had this yearning desire to be on stage, to do something that was performance arts related that I couldn't find an outlet for here in Jamaica. And so I begged my family. I said, please let me go. At this point, I was back working with the family.
So you felt a bit limited or at that point?
Yeah. And
in your youth?
And being in Toronto, I had my independence also. Being back in Jamaica, I almost felt like I had retracted. I had gone back to the life of a little girl because they were so protective of me. Once I was at home. Once I was in foreign, it was fine. So I begged to go to LA. My mother said, you have 2 years. If you don't make it doing something in performance arts by then, you're coming back home. I fell in love with acting. That's not what I went for, but it happened upon me. And I wouldn't go back into it now, but I'm still grateful for it because it taught me things about myself that I don't think I would have ever been able to learn, because acting forces you to be very introspective with your personal self. People have a misconception about acting. You're putting on a show. There is no way that you can actually bring truth to a character outside of you if you don't know who you are.
And were you, during that phase, were you specifically going for like suspense movies, or was it more training, or like was it action shows, or where were you kind of at mentally?
No, I was learning how to bring life to any character, really. So it didn't matter. Much like any sport, you know, we'll see the best in the world compete on the track, and we won't see the work that goes into. So you're
attempting to, you were gearing up.
Yeah, and I was treating it like a craft. Like you don't become a brain surgeon by just going in and actually doing brain surgery once. Or that's the only, you have to learn everything.
So what happened there? You came back to Jamaica, and what caused you to come back?
Because my grandfather got ill.
Okay.
And I came back to, at the time I thought it was help him get better, but he passed away some months after I came back. And I never went back to LA. I actually continued paying rent. And
he was really the patriarch of your family?
Absolutely. There would be none of the businesses that we currently are in would exist without him. It was his dream. He was a farmer. His father was a farmer. And it was his dream as a boy to own a sugar factory one day. And that's how we came about. That's how we happened upon Hampden.
And at that point, is that kind of how the whole Everglades is a legal name, but Hampden Rums is now your product, your brand. Is that how this whole concept came about?
Well, Everglades is a parent company, and Long Pond Sugar Factory was actually what we were after. That was the prize. Hampden Estate rum distillery was really just for us. We saw it as a throw-in, because we didn't, like many Jamaicans, even now, we didn't understand the value that was Hampden Estate. Internationally, it's known as one of the best rum distilleries in the world before we took it over, for years and decades. But because it's not a brand associated distillery in Jamaica, or it hadn't been prior to our operation of it, nobody knew what it was, including us.
And like any family or any business, let's say, was there a little tough window there? Was there a tough time between those years and the changes in the businesses?
Oh, there still is. I mean, we always kind of joke about the fact that every business that we ever went into, we did really well at. We are the ones who kind of paved the way. The same cannot be said for the sugar industry, clearly. We ended up having to close the sugar factory after many years of trying to make it work, like many who preceded us.
Yes. Because I think Panjam, where the faces were in it at one stage. I mean, Seprod has recently closed there. So it's there is a common thread there,
There is a
or a
common
trend
thread.
line, let's say. Yeah.
As unfortunate as it is, there is a common thread. But yeah, so my family always did well at everything that they did, but this was the first one that I would say presented major challenges. But like everything in life, you can't know the sweetness of victory and success if you don't really suffer the bitterness of failure.
So if one goes on the thesis that the past is the past, and you're where you are today now, you're a director, Hampden Rums, and Hampden is, you had mentioned it's more export focused. Is there anything that's in the local market, or was that a learning curve in the early stages with the rum business?
No, everything was a part of the learning curve, but Rumfire is still on the local market. We are really very much export focused otherwise as it pertains to our aged rums. We've created a brand called Hampden Estate. Surprise, surprise.
Okay.
Mostly for the export market. We have a wonderful international distribution partner, a conglomerate between an Italian and a French company. And they are very well known in the...
And they're a buyer of your products for the European markets?
Oh, for the international market. Not Rumfire. Rumfires, they import for the European market. I have a separate importer for Rumfire in the States.
So do they cover, say, North America for you as well, or just...
They cover North America for Hampden Estate brand, yes.
Okay.
So they're known as, it's a company called La Maison and Vellier. And the heads of the companies are known as kind of the gods of connoisseur rum.
Okay.
So every connoisseur in the world follows them like ticks, if you will. Everything that they release has a stamp of authenticity, and it's like a rare find. In any industry you go, you'll have a rare find, whether it's a piece of property or something that you must get your hands on. If you are an enthusiast, they have that. They have that credibility. So for us to be able to have the opportunity to partner with them, it was a no-brainer. And that was as a result of me having rum on the road, me trying with Rumfire, me learning who all the players in the industry are.
And how did you come across them? Did you get to know them through a family connection, or through some business linkages, or how did the whole partnership with this international distributor evolve?
I went to the UK Rum Festival a few years ago. I had been many times before at this point in time, and I had a small booth. And by this point, I had become quite well acquainted with Richard Seal, who is the operator of RL Seal and Foursquare Distillery in Barbados. And he's actually my mentor. He knows everything about rum. He's brilliant.
What rum does he produce, or does
it's called
company?
Foursquare.
Foursquare.
And to anybody who's a rum enthusiast, it's the so they do something similar to Appleton, where they do blended rum, so pot still and column still. Or if you want to take it to the Scotch industry, like a Johnny Walker, blended, as opposed to single malt, which would be pot still. So we at Hampden produce pot still only.
Got it.
At Foursquare in Barbados, they do pot still and column still. They do beautiful blends, absolutely delicious. And so Richard became a mentor, and he knew this guy, Luca Gargano, who's the principal at Vellier.
Okay.
Well, Luca is very eccentric. And he introduced me to him, and he asked me to allow Luca to taste the 4-year-old rum that we had at the time. 4 years doesn't sound like much to anybody, but in Jamaica, pot still rum in a barrel for 4 years in heat, losing 7 to 10% per year in the barrel, at 4 years it's going to be very well developed. So I allowed Luca to taste it, and I'm not going to give you the half-an-hour-long story, but at that point in time, he said...
It sealed the deal?
He said, if you have 50 barrels of this, I'll marry you tomorrow. I looked at my mom and I said, we have 200 barrels of this particular one, right? and she said, yes, we do. I said, well, Luca, I'm not marrying you, but thank you for being so ambitious.
So true entrepreneurial stories, you went to these festivals, you went to these same markets, and you met somebody, and you got this transaction done. And so you've been focusing more and more of your time on the Hampden rum side.
Yeah, especially for the export market.
Okay.
For the export market, Rumfire it has its place. Don't get me wrong, but it's very big in the bartender world.
Yes.
So it's a huge bartender
And how many,
product.
how many, let's say, how do you classify rum? How many flavors are there? With Appleton, we all know Appleton, and there's, let's say before this whole rebrand by Campari, there's a special and the reserve. But how does Hampden rums work?
So those are called expressions. So the brand will have multiple expressions, and so Hampden, we produce, right now we're doing 5 different expressions, but 2 of them are limited edition. Apart from that, though, those are the ones I actually have available on the local market. If you need a bottle, you call me.
They're in the local market as well.
I do have them in the local market. The aged rums, very limited, just because it's so difficult to really get out there and convince people that this product is as highly valued as it is overseas. Perfect. But overseas, we're doing multiple limited editions. I would say this season we have 26 limited editions, so single barrel releases. So that will be between 240 and 250 bottles per release, and they're all for different markets.
We're going to come right back to that. And we take another break on Business Live Extra. More when we return. Thanks for joining us on Business Live Extra. We're talking to Christelle Harris, Director of Hampden Estate, and leading within many of the Hussey Group of Company businesses. She serves as a director in many of the Hussey Group of Companies businesses. The businesses span multiple industries, including hospitality, gaming, retail, and manufacturing. She is proud to represent Hampden Estate and share the art and science of authentic Jamaica rum with the world. Hampden is one of the last surviving distilleries that still uses discontinuous distillation to produce its rums. 100% Jamaican owned, she has developed the Hampden Estate rum into a global brand. Let's take a look at a typical day with Christelle Harris. Christelle, welcome back.
Thank you.
Regarding, on the same line as the rums, so rum fire, if you go to any rum bar, across the length and breadth of Jamaica, will you see rum fire in it, or was that more of the initial strategy and then you've kind of focused on the export market?
I would love for rum fire to be in every bar. The truth is, it's a competitive local market. And I understand why, because every single rum product on the local market in Jamaica that's produced in Jamaica is of exceptional quality. So especially the brands that have been here as established brands for a longer period of time, they're gonna put everything into retaining market share. So it's no surprise that it's difficult to compete in this industry.
And who are, on the local market, who are the competitors now? Is it really just, say, Appleton, aka Campari, or is there anybody else that's really giving Appleton a go?
Oh, so we have 4 wonderful companies, 6 distilleries, but stretched over 4 companies. There is Campari Group, which does Appleton, Ray and Nephew, and the Charlie's, JB, and so. There is Money Musk Rums, that they have wonderful product. They're another one that's flying under the radar locally, but doing quite well overseas because of the same rum connoisseur community. They understand not only the white rum, but also the aged rum. I think they have a classic gold and another one. I don't remember the actual name.
And is it very competitive, or because there's such a dominating factor in the market? Do you guys all get along at rum festivals?
Absolutely.
Do you travel together? Do you converse, maybe even some strategy together? Is there an association?
There is an association. There's a local association that we are all a part of, Spirit Pool Association, and if you have part of ownership in a distillery, you sit at the table. And
it's an active association.
It's an active association, but then more so for me, what's more enjoyable internationally is that we all see ourselves as stronger together.
Okay.
Jamaica rum is much stronger together than any of the brands apart are, because... So
globally, really, you basically really represent Jamaica strongly.
Yeah.
And go out there together.
Yeah, so when I speak at any event, a rum-based event, I'm there as Hampden, but I always make it very, very clear, the second I open my mouth, I'm here to represent Jamaica rum first.
Okay.
Second, Hampden. And because it is by...
And do you think that goes across all your competitors? Like, fly the flag very high when you go to these events and focus on a nationalistic interest as well?
The other distillery that does it as much as I do, as much as we at Hampden do, is Worthy Park.
Okay.
Worthy Park has an exceptional product, and they've invested very heavily in really creating more expressions, and they have a great team. So I'm very close with them. They do Rum Bar and the Worthy Park line, and they've done very, very well. So they fly that Jamaica flag very high as well.
No, one would think, of course, we know the net margins, the margins are better with the export market. I mean, there's even junior market companies on the stock exchange, main market companies, all they do is focus on export, 100% of the business, 80%. The money is better, you get foreign exchange, the dollar devalues, etc. Do you think it's possible to crack into the monopoly of Wray & Nephew, or is it just that it takes an extremely huge capital base? Like it has to be almost like dumb money for the first 5 years to really get a go at it?
For the local market, yeah, I think so. I think the capital base that would be needed to crack the local market would be
sizable.
And
okay.
You see, because
Rum Bar has tried also and kind of pull back as well a bit. Or
I think they're doing well, but what percentage of market share are you actually getting? Whereas overseas, the products are so highly sought after that you don't have to do too much. Yes, of course, you're investing in your A&P, but for me to sell one bottle of the aged rum locally, because Jamaican people don't really know about it that much, I'm going to have to give away 9 bottles first. Overseas, it's the opposite.
So do you ever see a deal? You mentioned about marrying Luca, right? And let's just say that's not going to happen.
No.
But do you see a deal where maybe, Hampden Rums, you might do a M&A or a deal, a private equity deal with a global brand? Is there any interest from global brands who might want to come into the Jamaica rum market?
We've been approached many times from many different angles. We're actually one of the only 2 Jamaican-owned distilleries anymore. It's just us and Worthy Park. We don't have any immediate plans of doing that. But that being said, everything in life has a price tag. Every opportunity has its positives, and I wouldn't rule anything out, because that would be very, very short-sighted and almost arrogant.
So that's a good point. So similar to tourism, where we've seen private equity funds come to Jamaica, whether it's BlackRock, we've seen a host of others, big international chains come. I guess Marriott now recently. You've been approached before, and maybe that might be something that comes back on your radar in the future.
Everything in life is for a time, and to say with 100% concrete confidence that it will never change, and I think it's very short-sighted.
Yeah.
And we have to also acknowledge that times change, things change, opportunities change. What you want out of life for yourself might change. It almost definitely will. So I think going forward, whether it's your personal life, career, your company, whether it's privately owned or otherwise, I think it's important to always remain flexible.
So fair enough. And what's the Marquee product? You mentioned 5 flavors, expressions. Is there a Marquee product that just outsells all the other 4? And what's that called? Hampden what?
Well, so it's Hampden 46. Well, that's not true. We changed it this year. It's Hampden Pure Single Rum.
Okay.
And it's a 46% pure pot still expression. And the reason why it's our lead product is because it's not a limited edition product. A lot of the other things that we're doing are limited editions.
Okay.
Because collectors love them, and we have the ability to be able to produce new expressions every year, then be the same formulation, but because everything changes so quickly in a tropical climate, we can create a liquid that's significantly different with the same blend in a year.
And what's the biggest market now? For all your export markets, what's the biggest country? Italy.
Italy, because they have a huge connoisseur market, and that's the headquarters for our distribution partner. So I have 120 people on the ground in Italy doing groundwork for me. Not just for me, but for the other brands.
What's your take on it? What's this whole, I don't know, 10, 20, maybe 20 years ago, I guess, digital came to Jamaica. There was this whole kind of Irish Jamaica, love affair going on. Campari is now here, and then you say you're doing well in Italy as well. What's the whole Italian Jamaica, love affair now?
I think in our case it's a little bit different because it is a private company. He came to the Caribbean.
But is it that Italians are drinking more rum, or is it that rum is starting to actually do well also in Italy, like in your specific case?
I think that in the rum industry, I think what they really value is authenticity. And that's where we really fly the flag high, and we kind of we've paved the way in terms of being authentic and remaining true to our standards, because actually there are laws that were passed many years ago that make the rules for rum very, very strict in Jamaica. In other countries, they don't have these strict rules that prohibit them from adding sugar or from adding glycerin and tampering with the product after distillation. In Jamaica, we're so strict that we have to color within a very, very narrow line.
And from what you're seeing globally, are persons drinking Hampden by itself, or are they drinking it with mixers, in like what we do a lot here, or what's happening globally with your product?
Drink rum how you like it. And I think that is something that a lot of the rum producers, a lot of the authentic rum producers really stand behind. There's no right way to drink it. A lot of Jamaicans will take rum fire, or Ray and Nephew, or Money Musquite, or rum bar and drink it straight. Overseas, you wouldn't hear of that. So it's really just a matter of what you like. Obviously, it's a lot easier to mix a 63% alcohol by volume in a cocktail for the general public. But our aged expressions are drunk mostly on the rocks or neat at least once by the consumer, even if they do like mixed drinks.
Yes.
It's much like a single malt. You're not going to find too many people drinking a single malt with Coke. You're going to find them mixing Johnny Walker maybe because it's a blended product, but a single malt. So we're kind of the single malt of the rum world, if you will.
And where does Christelle, where does the board of directors, the shareholders, where do you want to see Hampden in 10 years? What's your vision for Hampden rums?
Well, we've invested quite a bit in expanding our infrastructure and our ability to be able to keep up with the demand. So I would like to see Hampden as the single malt of rums. So every major bar that you go into internationally, not just locally, I'd like to see it celebrated more locally as well. But I think that will happen because as Jamaicans, we tend to sometimes wait until things that we own are celebrated overseas before we accept it locally.
Yes.
So I'm not so concerned about that. I think that Jamaican people will be very proud to stand behind Hampden and the other great Jamaican rum products that exist once they realize what a big deal we are overseas.
We're going to come back to that and your thoughts on just the rum industry globally also. And we take another break on Business Dive Extra. More with Director Christelle Harris when we return. Welcome back to Business Dive Extra. Rumfire, the local white overproof rum, and Hampden Gold, the local gold variety, are both award-winning, picking up awards in Italy, Germany, France, and the USA. Despite the awards, it remains relatively unknown to the Jamaican market. Everglades Farms has invested heavily into the estates, providing jobs throughout Trelawny. This complements the Christelle Harris Charity Fund, which raises money to improve infrastructure in schools and churches since 2008. We have so much to cover with Christelle Harris. Christelle, welcome back for a final time.
Thank you.
It's good. So we're talking about these awards. I mean, what with the rums and the brands and the Hampden 46 or whatever it's called now, what are some of these big marquee awards, or what has been getting Hampden on the map globally?
Well, I think it's really mostly the connoisseur relationships and the fact that it is kind of a tight-knit community. But we have won some of the big awards that we've won are the International Wines and Spirits Competition Gold. That's kind of that's a big deal. When you win one of those, you know that you can stand firmly behind whatever it is that you're putting on the market. But for me, what's more telling is the consumer reaction. And as I said, most Jamaicans, including myself, did not know anything about Hampden. And a lot of us still don't. But when I travel, they're the ones that were telling me, oh my gosh, Hampden, Hampden. I have people coming to Jamaica because they want to go to visit Hampden, not visiting Hampden because they're in Jamaica. They plan their, they'll save up and plan for their first per 5-year trip to come to Hampden.
Yes.
And it really is kind of the most exceptional experience ever because it's like going back in time. Hampden had the good fortune of all the practices being maintained since the 1700s. So, any industry you're going to want to improve. You're going to want to introduce technological advancements to be able to improve your economies of scale, be able to reduce your costs. Hampden didn't have that. As a result, they've held on to all these archaic principles of production that really make it impossible for Hampden.
Which you've updated? Or is it?
We have updated Hampden insofar as we've needed to. So wherever there was a place of the distillery that wasn't safe, and we knew that there might be an issue with our workplace safety or with our visitors' safety, we made those changes.
You made changes.
But as it pertains to the actual production process, we have changed nothing.
Nothing, right?
So it's really like stepping back in time. You can't get that anywhere else.
Understood. But does that actually, on that point, does that hurt your capacity, or based on what you're saying, if you're not changing everything or making certain improvements?
To a point, it does hurt our capacity, but up until recently, there hasn't been a huge demand for it except for fresh rum. So prior to our operation of Hampden, all the rum was distilled, and so long fermentation process, but then distilled and sent off in bulk. 25,000 liters at a time.
And does that happen? Does that happen at all anymore now?
Yes,
Are you
it still
doing,
happens.
say, contract manufacturing or just say bulk?
So we actually we honor all the relationships that we inherited.
Wow. Okay.
Whether and I'm not going to go into which relationships we might have inherited locally because, but we do honor all the relationships.
But it provides you with, I mean, at the same time, that gives you some good cash flow, some stability for the business. It gives us our
cash flow.
Yeah.
There would be no bottled Hampden Estate right now if it weren't for the cash flow afforded to us by the bulk.
So when did you actually then launch the 5 expressions? What year was that roughly?
So we only started the aged expressions in 2018, and we started with the 2 that are into perpetuity. We're not planning on making them limited.
So when you think about it, the spirits business is fascinating, and the valuations out there have been incredible. I mean, just looking at what's happening in, say, tequila now, and there's actors getting involved like The Rock, and we've seen something with Ryan Reynolds and selling a brand for something like 600, 700 million US, and David Beckham in gin, and all these celebrities, and even Jay-Z with his recent transaction. So the thing is that, do you think rum is an industrial sector that will be in a nightclub one day, or will be hip and sexy, or how do you feel about the investment theory of rum? Will it become catchy one day?
I think it will become catchy, but I hate to keep going back to academics or theory, but in order for it to happen, we have to present ourselves as very highly valued. And one of the things that is putting us in a very precarious position is that a lot of people are very confused by what rum actually is. There are a lot of brands internationally that don't play by the same rules that we do, and that waters down our value. As a result of that, I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to treat it like the single malt. The single malt part. Single malt in Scotch whiskey was only invented in the 1960s. Before then, everything was blended. What single malt did for the Scotch whiskey industry is that it allowed Scotch in general to be perceived at a much higher value, because it was now the ultimate, the premium.
So do you view any of your current 5 expressions as being premium? Or
everything that we do is because of the way that we produce it. So single malt would still be premium even before it went into a barrel.
But do you see yourself doing an even more premium, cooler looking bottle, or for right now the focus is these 5 expressions you have?
No, we're going to do more limited editions,
Okay.
for sure. As I said, right now we have 26 limited editions being released just this year, and most of them have sold off in the markets that
Wow.
before they even get released in the markets. Once a distributor announces that they're carrying them, they're gone. And I mean, they're not going for $1. They're, a couple €100 a bottle. So that's happening in the rum industry, but it's happening underground. And I
Very
think
privately.
I think it's happening privately, and I think in the next 10 years we're going to be very surprised locally at what has happened overseas.
Okay.
It's almost going to be like, where did this come from?
So you in your projections, you do feel, your gut feeling is rum will become somewhat of a more established brand globally.
Absolutely.
You are bullish.
As it should be.
You are bullish on rum.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I'm even more bullish about the principles that make Jamaica rum. Because there are, as I said, there are a lot of rums out there, not from Jamaica, that don't adhere to the same principles that we do. They're putting out cubic zirconia when we're putting out a diamond.
Gotcha.
They can try all they want to look and taste like it, but at the end of the day, it's the authenticity. That's where the value is, and I think that's what will catapult us.
And that's great to hear. And Trelawny, like any business, you've had your ups and downs. Trelawny has been an interesting experience. Your charity, your fund, the Christelle Harris Fund. Tell us about that, and what have you been doing in Trelawny to give back, or philanthropy?
So I started the fund in 2008. How old am I? I started it 12 to 13 years ago almost. And I started it because my grandmother was having a birthday party for me. I think you might have come to a few of them in the past. And I thought it was just unnecessary. I was living away. And so I thought to myself, the best way I can feel good about this is let me do some sort of fundraising to a cause. Philanthropy has always been something very close to my heart. I believe in never looking down on somebody unless it is to help them up. And I didn't feel like I was doing any of that. So this afforded me the opportunity to be able to do that.
And did it start off, let's say, for the Trelawny area, or did you kind of pivot it, as life moved on?
It started, my first initiative was with the Bustamante Hospital for Children. And that was before it kind of got the celebrity attention that it currently is very lucky to have. When that started to happen, and that happened to be the same time when our businesses in Trelawny were just starting. So maybe just about a year and a half after. And that's when I decided to pivot my focus to Trelawny, because I realized that there was just so much need
down there. And with that said, your focus is Hampden Rums. You have your foundation charity going on. Is this the bulk of your time, or do you find yourself getting pulled in different directions? Because you're involved with your group of companies.
Yeah.
What's kind of your day-to-day, your life like?
Well, I joke with my family all the time that it's a good thing God hasn't given me any children yet, because if He did, I wouldn't have any time for them. Between my parents and my grandmother, I'm very close with them. And I work with the family and the entire group. So Terra Nova All-Suite Hotel is a big passion of mine as well. So I'm leading lady of rum and leading lady in hospitality as well. I love to take care of people.
Okay.
So I love to serve people. Sometimes people think I'm a waitress because I will be running tables in the restaurant on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, because the work is there to be done. And if I happen to be there and a table needs clearing, I might drop the knife and fork when I'm taking it to the kitchen, but I'm not going to leave it there.
And do you see any, right now you're pulling different directions, but you're focused on the rum business. Do you see any, big opportunities or things where maybe the Hussey group might do something on the bigger picture scale, or for right now it's just, slow and steady, keep pushing, you're learning the business?
I'm learning the business. There's always something new. And I think particularly at this time, though, yes, we have some plans for expansion and diversity, but at this point in time, because we're in such a situation with the pandemic, we never really know what's going to change. It's important to be able to make assumptions, but you have to always be ready to pivot at any point in time. So that is something that we've never really had to do before. It's always been, okay, these are the assumptions for the year. This is what the plan is. This is what the budget is. Now, I feel like everybody's kind of spinning like a bit of a gig, regardless of how liquid you are, regardless of what your resource base might look like, regardless of your network, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Well said. Well, it's been great having you. Christelle Harris from Hampden Rums. Thanks for joining us on Business Dive Extra. We really appreciate it. That's it for another edition of Business Dive Extra. Remember, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. We've been talking with Christelle Ruth Harris, Director of Hampden Estate. Don't forget, you can watch us online at cvm.com/videos/Business Dive Extra. Thanks for joining us.